Hello again. If there is one class of ruthless and unprincipled scoundrels in Britain for whom I have no time at all, it is human rights lawyers. These parasites spend their working lives trying to ensure that dangerous foreign men are allowed to stay in this country, even if they have planted bombs or machine gunned people. Every time a deportation is planned, one of these awful customers pops up and quotes the European Convention on Human Rights. Take, if you will, the case of a Bangladeshi man in Birmingham who was sent to prison following his conviction for trying to recruit terrorists for the so-called Islamic State in Syria and Iraq. When it was time to release him, the Home Office had it in mind to put him on the next flight to Bangladesh. But an astute human rights lawyer soon saw the difficulty with that. It would deprive the fellow of access to Britain's National Health Service, and this would mean that his human rights were being trampled on. Imagine that. Using our doctors and hospitals is now seemingly a human right for people from South Asia. Then there's the Iranian who had a bomb factory in his garage, but cannot be deported because he suffers from depression. Or Ahmed al-Said from Sudan. He's the fellow on the left of the thumbnail in this video. He looked pretty cheerful, as well he might. He was sent to prison for 4.5 years for preparing acts of terrorism, and now we're stuck with him for good. None of these people are British citizens. These are not tricky ethical cases like depriving Shamima Begum of her citizenship. All 53 of the cases in the dossier which has been compiled are villainous and in many cases murderous foreigners who have no right at all to be in this country. It has proved, though, impossible to get rid of them. This is, of course, relevant to current attempts to deport illegal immigrants who have come to this country by various dubious means, chiefly sailing across the English Channel in little boats. If we are unable to deport known killers and terrorists whose nationality is certain, what do you think the odds are of being able to hoof out of the country somebody with no documents who claims to be facing the risk of torture in his own country? In fact, the chances are effectively zero. Whatever we think would be a good way to tackle the scourge of illegal immigration, nothing will actually be done about it. Once they land, those people are here to stay. I realise that quite a few people are in favour of repatriation as a way of dealing with the perceived problems which mass immigration has brought to Britain, but the reality is this is not going to happen. The most that we might hope for in the future is that the flood of immigration might somehow be stemmed, but there's no sign that anybody at all wishes to do that. It's simply too profitable for so many people, even if it does end up trashing the country. Quite apart from those crossing the Channel on small boats, we have countless tens of thousands of overseas students coming to study in this country and often bringing with them their wives and children. This is keeping many of our universities afloat financially because they can charge far higher fees to overseas students than they can to British people. In other words, if we were to cut off the supply of overseas students, people coming to this country to study, a lot of those universities simply go to the wall. Their whole operating model is predicated upon limitless immigration by foreign students. Of course, many of these people will, on graduating, return to their own countries, but many will not. Then there's the cheap labour which employers love so much. Nobody wishes to give up on that. Again, some seasonal workers will return home, others will not. Add to this the millions of Chinese people from Hong Kong granted British passports recently, the Afghans, the Ukrainians and all the others, and there really is no sign that immigration will be slowing down anytime soon. If anything, it's accelerating. And as we have seen, once here it does not matter what you do, quite literally, even committing murder or detonating bombs, you will never be turfed out of Britain. It's win-win really for illegal immigrants and those who overstay their visa.